Greetings, sisters. This is Ava, and this is your Queen Online course, Class 6, The Leader, Part 1, The Queen, Living Life as It Was Always Meant to Be. In our last class, Class 5, we talked about the nature of the queenly presence, of impersonality, of self-esteem and confidence, and how a queenly woman walks in the world. In part 1 of this class, we speak in greater detail of exactly how the queen in woman is supposed to be the good leader for humanity. Sisters, this is the ancient and natural way for humans, woman as good leader. This is the way humans were meant to live. This is the way humans did live for thousands of years before patriarchy arose. This is the way a very tiny percentage of humans still live in some remote parts of the world in matriarchies. And since the queen is missing in so many women all over the world, we see how this explains why women are not leading in most cultures the world over. And we see the terrible result for humanity. We see all life suffers when woman is not queen, when she is not the leader for humanity. So, in this class, we delve into the specifics of exactly how a queenly woman leads. Very different from the way average men lead, and very different from the way we have all, women and men, all of us, been trained to lead in this ridiculous, life-denying, patriarchal culture. So in this class, we talk about the difference between leading like alpha, which is how the average man leads, and leading like water, which is how the queen and woman leads. In part 2 of this class, which will be coming next, we discuss how the queen aspect is also the speaker for woman. And of course, it follows that since the queen is missing in so many modern women, obviously this explains why women's voices have not been heard for thousands of years. So in that next class, we also discuss the way in which a queenly woman communicates, how she speaks, how she is heard. And for those of you who perhaps don't necessarily think of yourself as a leader, well, perhaps consider this. It may be that everyone is really a leader somehow for someone. Because isn't this true? Are we not all leading by example just by how we live out our lives in front of others day in, day out, week in, week out, year after year? The leader. The leader is, by definition, not the one who is constantly living in fear and lack and confusion and helplessness. No matter how desperate the circumstances may get, a woman who feels herself to be a leader never has the mindset of the victim, of the oppressed, of the abused. And, she may appear to be oppressed or abused by a husband, a boss, a misogynistic society at large. But the leader, the queen, never identifies as a victim of anything or anyone. The opposite of the victim archetype is the success. And the leader is the one who has figured out how to be successful in her world, however she defines success. And that, of course, is not necessarily material success, but rather an overall feeling of fulfillment. And if she is not presently successful on her own terms, then with confidence in herself, she continues to hold success as a constant principle within her. And she works magically every day to bring this forward from the unseen world into the seen world of her daily life. And of course, we talk about that elsewhere in this course. The verb to succeed is also defined as to inherit sovereignty, as in succession to a crown. The queen archetype is the essence of success because it is she who inherits her own sense of divine sovereignty from her own soul, and more importantly, she knows that she does so. There are two kinds of queen, the public and the private, the visible and the less visible. Every woman is a private queen, the not necessarily visible queen. And women who lead publicly or hold center for something publicly also become the visible queen or the public queen. The public queen has a very difficult position, for she must perform her duties often while many, both in and outside her realm, are carefully scrutinizing her every move, watching for mistakes. Not an easy place from which to do your work. You know, we all occasionally speak or act unskillfully. So if you are part of the realm of a public queen, go easy on her, especially if you know she has a good heart and is doing her best, because her job is a tough one.
For most daily life, the queen is like water. Water refreshes and cleans all without distinction, without judgment, without withholding. Water goes fearlessly and freely beneath the surface of things, feeding them invisibly. Water is fluid, moving in response to what is happening. In this, the queen is like water. She works without complaint in whatever setting she finds herself with any issue that comes before her. She acts in ways that serve the greatest good, always including herself in that single greatest good. If she has chosen to be queen of a particular realm, she serves well in the moment, regardless of the pay. That does not mean she allows herself to be taken advantage of continuously. She speaks clearly, simply, kindly, and honestly. She does not intervene so much as shed light on a situation. She supports the work the group is doing to birth whatever it may be birthing. She is more midwife than commander. Give yourself a gift of relaxation and take the next minute or two to relax completely into this water beauty filmed by David Hooting, and meditate on the ways in which you can lead like water in your particular life.
The queen understands and flows with the natural laws of the universe. When she experiences a feeling of struggle in her life, particularly in leading a group, she becomes aware that she is probably trying to push the river. The queen never leads by force or pushing, or what is called in ancient wisdom, known as the Tao Te Ching, harsh interventions, if she can possibly help it. The ways in which the queen properly leads like water actually feel kind of backward to us in modern times, wrong, strange to most of us, since we are so conditioned, so trained, so brainwashed by patriarchy to lead by force, by domination, by pressure, by control. We are taught wrongly that the queen is simply a female king, and she's supposed to lead the same way a king does, by issuing decrees, by imposing directives, by telling people what to do, by giving commands and orders. Alpha on steroids. When this form of leadership is used indiscriminately in all settings without sensitivity to the situation, this becomes the evil queen archetype created by the patriarchal mindset, not the actual queen of which we are speaking here in this work. Force and domination and oppression is not of the true queen. Leading like water means leading without ego, without force, and without pushing.
Water, element of the queen. So, sisters, whether it is a woman's circle you are facilitating, or a family circle or event, or perhaps a company that you are in charge of, with the exception of the rare case when there is some emergency and you need to, for everybody's safety, lead like alpha, except for that, you and your realm are usually best served by you, the leader, being water. Water, nothing but air, is more essential to life. We can live a month without food, but only 3 or 4 days without water. And we all know our bodies are mostly water and require continuous amounts of water to function properly. We know even minor dehydration sets up chain reactions of illness and breakdown in our bodies. Water is the most humble of elements, yet utterly essential. It is life. Likewise, the queen is humble in her way of walking in the world, yet like water, nothing can function properly without her. And like water, she can often be taken for granted in her functioning, although I will say a smart queen will not let this state of lack of appreciation continue for very long. If she's doing her job correctly, sometimes she will often be nearly invisible. Yet remove her from her position at the center and things start to fall apart, to unravel, into disarray, to die. I am acquainted with the leader of a large Midwestern women's spiritual group, and this woman is just such a like water leader. If you were to attend a large gathering of this group, and if you didn't know who their leader was, you might not know for days that she was anything but another attendee. Yet take her away and the whole program would very likely fall apart. She quietly holds the center. All creation unfolds within the framework of the natural laws of the universe, of the divine, and water is the river through which it all flows. Through our own ignorance, we try to push the river. We try to dam the river. We try to direct the river in a forceful and controlling way. We walk away from the river. We do a 1,000 foolish things with, to, and against the river. The river doesn't care. The river flows on. It is we who suffer. And the queen sees how much suffering is caused by not understanding how to flow with things.
The greatest rulers, people do not know they have them. Proceeding calmly. Task accomplished. And the people all say, matter settled. We did it naturally. The Tao Te Ching, Chapter 17. Yes, the queen is mostly midwife, only rarely commander.
In leading like water, the queen thinks of herself more as a midwife than a commander. A woman helping another woman give birth does not intervene in the process unless she absolutely must in order to save a life. She is not the star here. She is assisting at someone else's birth. She does this with no show, no fuss. She is part of the process, but she is not the controller of the process. She is facilitating another's process. In the case of the queen, she's facilitating the group's process. The queen does not intrude. She does not control. She does not constantly force her own needs, insights, and opinions into the foreground, no matter how right she thinks she is. She knows that if she does not trust the group's process, the members of the group certainly will not trust her. If a midwife finds that she must strongly take the lead, she does so in a way that the mother is helped, yet is still in charge of her own process. When the baby is born, the mother will say, "I did it," and rightly so. And the midwife steps back and smiles, her reward being another beautiful baby in the world. Credit for the birth does not enter her mind.
Girl, look at how beautiful she looks.
Yes, yes, yes.
Just gaze in wonder at these beautiful ancient images of woman, mother and queen to humanity, giving birth to life through the ages. The queen is to the group as the midwife is to the mother. If a center-holding queen finds that she must strongly take the lead within the group, she does so with as little force as possible, allowing the group to process what must be processed. When the group, the mother, comes to a harmonious conclusion, their own giving birth, the queen is quiet and smiles, her reward being another beautiful result for the group. So another way of looking at this is the way in which author Margaret Wheatley describes it, the leader as host rather than leader as hero. The heroic leadership model, leading like alpha, is hierarchical and is the only model favored by patriarchy. The leader as hero holds information close, takes total charge and control, tells people what to do, brooks no argument and invites no discussion, doesn't explain very much, is a form of top-down leadership, is patriarchal, dominating, and male-centric. And of course, as we've said, this alpha leadership is most useful in war, in the military, in emergencies, or in situations of grave physical danger. But unless you are a career general in the military, in most normal life situations, it is better to lead like a host, much more life-affirming. A person who holds center and leads like a host shares most information freely, holds center but does not attempt to control, helps people come to their own conclusions, invites free discussion and sharing of opinion, explains most things transparently, is welcoming and caring and respectful, treating the members of the group as if they were guests in her home, is a form of center-holding leadership, is matriarchal, shares power, and is human-centric rather than male-centric. The leader as host is welcoming, caring, and respectful of the people with whom they work. This form of leadership, leading like water, allows more of a conversation amongst the members of the group rather than a top-down form of communication that goes only one direction. In leading like water, the queen is serving as a patient and strong midwife to her realm. She shines a light for the good that naturally wants to unfold. She shares her own opinion, but she does not push for it. We find that any group will almost always come to the correct choice of action when given enough loving space, held consciously.
Leading in this way absolutely does not mean, walk away and let them figure it out on their own. No, that is abandoning your group, not serving it. No, what leading like water means is doing the sometimes difficult, sometimes tiring, sometimes invisible, sometimes thankless, often misunderstood job of holding the center quietly, mindfully, attentively. Within your own realm, holding the center is holding your own pool of vision and including others in it, guiding them gently when necessary, always, always with the least amount of pressure or force possible. And the Queen is perfectly capable of speaking and directing when her doing so serves the group. Yet, in leading like water, we often find that it is frequently more useful to the group for the Queen to call upon her own wise woman aspect's ability to hold silence and space, just the way a midwife does. This is a very Taoist way of looking at the world, a very Taoist way of being. The hero gets to have her ego inflated with her leadership, but the Queen simply holds center without ego. To become a great queen really means to let go more and more every year and simply see what is really needed in the moment.
So let's talk for a moment about what the Tao Te Ching calls harsh interventions. The skillful queen is able to see the big picture in the realm. But with this power, oftentimes she can see ahead of others exactly where something is headed. And if she knows that this direction will not result in the greatest good for all, sometimes she has a very strong urge to jump in like a commander and order the fix that she knows will make everything right. It seems like this would be so much easier and quicker than waiting for the group to process the matter and come to its own realization. Sometimes even a very good queen is very tempted to be more the surgeon on a schedule than the patient midwife. It is the impatient, commanding surgeon who prematurely grabs the knife and performs an unnecessary C-section because his golf tee time is 3:30 this afternoon and he's tired of waiting for the mother to deliver her child on her terms in her time. The wise queen does not make this crude and unskillful mistake of using unwarranted force. She waits patiently for what wants to unfold, and she knows that in leading a group, the point is not to get the group to do what she thinks is right. The point is to gently help the group come to its greatest good on its own. The Queen knows that constant interventions block or dam up the group process. The Queen, and this can certainly be very difficult for a woman with strong opinions, does not insist that things are always done in a certain way or her way. She holds the intention for the field and lets the group get there on its own. Just as in management, the very best managers of people do not over supervise every detail of a worker's job. The manager gives the employee the overall intention, what the desired outcome is, like we'd like to sell 10,000 widgets this month, tells them what the basic boundaries are. You can't keep people here at work until midnight, tells them what the ethical parameters are. You can't steal widgets from another company. And then she lets the employee run with it, keeping an eye on the inexperienced until she trusts they're working. The wise leader intervenes only when necessary, when absolutely necessary. And if she finds herself intervening too frequently, she knows that something is probably amiss, and it might be her own increasing ego-driven impatience. When she notices this, she deliberately stops, she grounds herself, and she returns to a place of patience. She is the midwife to the realm, not the busy and hurried surgeon slicing away to arrive at a quick final result regardless of the cost. This is the way people in a group inadvertently get cut up. When and how much to intervene? Well, this can be a tricky line to walk. The queen looks to see if her ego is attached to the intervention she is considering. If she feels very emotional about it, if she's saying under her breath, damn it, the members of this group need to do this, then she may be about to intervene unnecessarily. Egos can blind us. When her ego is involved, the queen absolutely cannot see clearly enough to choose an intervention wisely. A great river can be the ruler of 100 valleys because of her goodness in staying low. Thus, if a ruler wishes to be over people, she must speak humbly to them. If she wishes to be in front of people, she must place herself behind them. Thus, the ruler is positioned above, but the people do not feel burdened. The ruler is in front, but the people do not feel harmed. Thus, the world is glad to push this ruler forward without resentment, because she does not contend. So the world does not contend with her. The Tao Te Ching, chapter 66.
Lesser leaders intervene a lot, do a lot, talk a lot, have a lot of rules and a lot of followers, and they end up forming cults of various types and sizes, even if you may not recognize what they're doing as a cult. The good queen, the wise queen, knows how very dangerous this is. The followers put you up on their pedestal for a while. Remember, they are controlling your rise, and it is inevitable that they will eventually decide to drag you down from it. They are controlling your fall. Either way, they are in control, and you played right into their hands. The queen always remembers never to willingly get up on that pedestal, but to stay close to the earth, in humility, near the humus. Then, if you do fall, you'll be close to mom, and it won't hurt so much. It does seem sometimes that in leading, one must intervene very suddenly, strongly, perhaps even harshly. The queen only intervenes in this way when she has tried everything else, when everything else seems to have failed. Having to make a harsh intervention may mean that the leader has not been paying attention along the way. It may mean that she has not seen what has been unfolding under her nose all along. The leader who constantly engages in harsh interventions will be brought down. Even if her harsh intervention appears to succeed brilliantly, the wise queen knows that this is not the time to celebrate. Somehow, there has probably been some injury. Somehow, someone has probably been violated in some small or large way. The person who has, quote, lost the argument may leave the group, and all who remain may heave a sigh of relief and be very glad. But the queen does not permit those in her realm to then do a high-fiving victory jig. The energy of the loser will, as it says in the Tao Te Ching, follow the leader like a hungry ghost. The wise queen will look to see what she might have done unskillfully along the way, leading up to the seeming necessity of her intervention. She'll process this, she'll digest it as a learning opportunity. She knows that this should be a solemn and thoughtful time for all.
If the so-called loser of the argument stays with the group, her resentment will go underground and simmer, and eventually it will come up again in some even more troublesome way for you. Making people do what we think they should do does not assist in clarity and greater consciousness for all. If force is used on them, they may initially cave and your people may do what you tell them to do in the moment, but inwardly they are disturbed. They will grow increasingly confused and angry, and very likely will plot against you. Unskillful interventions by a queen prepare the group soil to hatch future plots against you as queen. And this is why the Tao Te Ching says this seeming victory is ultimately actually a failure. The group will always eventually challenge the ego of any leader who leads egocentrically. The true queen leads selflessly as best she can, and so she grows, she endures, and she is loved in spite of her flaws.
The words humble and humility relate to the word humus, as in earth, soil, dirt. Humble does not mean lower than, it means grounded in reality. The queen has humility naturally because she is completely grounded in reality. She sees what is really happening, oftentimes when other members of the group cannot. A person with humility never pushes unless absolutely necessary. If in a group, whether you're the leader or not, if you find yourself somehow pushing, it might be best to stop all action and speaking immediately. Silently, internally, intentionally ground yourself to the reality of the situation. See what is really happening. Get some queenly clarity, and only then proceed.
The wise queen does not pass out grades for good performance, either privately or publicly. She says thank you, and she expresses great gratitude, but she does not set up openly competitive situations within her realm. She would not have a contest to see who could do the most whatevers, then award a prize for the winner. When you reinforce appearances, people scramble to please. Scrambling sets up dualities and competitions when the group could be working together in harmony towards helping the great single vision of the realm to unfold. People can have room to learn a great deal about themselves and the way the world works if they are not trying to figure out what pleases the queen or what makes them look good to others. The queen knows that trying to create an impression is less powerful than simply acting from one center. When she does this, everyone in her realm has a chance to remember this truth, that all effective action arises out of clear vision. In this way, the group works together for the greatest good.
The queen wants everyone to make it.
Likewise, the queen is careful not to have favorites. Of course, there are always those with whom a leader will naturally share a greater or lesser resonance. And with those for whom she has a lesser resonance, she uses this as an opportunity to see what she can learn about herself, about her own ego, her own opinions, her own harshness, her own prejudice, her own judgment. The queen does her best to avoid having favorites. She treats everyone with the same simple, gracious courtesy, whether she likes them or not.
We've spoken of leading like water, and this is the way a woman should lead most of the time in normal situations of daily life. There are, however, times when one must lead as alpha. The alpha dog, the top dog, the ruler, the number one. She says jump and you say how high. A queenly woman understands this form of leadership, but She uses it very sparingly. It is necessary in times of physical emergency, catastrophe, or disaster where people's lives are hanging in the balance. It is necessary in times of war. And it is also necessary when, like, the show must go on right now. Once in a blue moon, the situation will arise when, for everyone's safety or for the success of the venture, you simply must do what the leader tells you to do, and you must do it without debate, without questioning, without complaining, without mulling it over at your leisure, without coming to a consensus with the group. If in these rare situations you are the leader, these are the times when you simply must give a confident command in order to keep everyone safe or to move the event along properly. For example, leading as alpha is important when an event is about to begin and there's no time for further debate about the merits of this or that. Let's say your group is putting on a play and the curtain is just about to go up and you see that something on stage is amiss. You, as queen, can rightfully bark a quick order and rightfully have it fulfilled, rightfully expect to have it fulfilled with no questioning. You will have earned this right to have your people follow your alpha orders without question in those rare instances because of the countless previous times that you have graciously led them like water.
The ridiculous patriarchal mindset sees war as a game to be won. And of course, all games, to be really fun and interesting, must have rules. The Geneva Conventions, the rules of engagement, the Hague Convention, the Brussels Declaration, the 1880 Manual of the Laws and Customs of War at Oxford. Can you believe there is such a thing? There is.
Laws of men's war go back to the earliest patriarchal times, and modern laws of war teach some very funny ideas about war. The 1949 Geneva Conventions declare that one of the rules of war is that combatants must wear a distinctive uniform and carry weapons openly. Further, and I find this truly odd, it is okay to impersonate a soldier of the other side by wearing the enemy uniform, yet it is unlawful to actually engage in combat in that uniform. What nonsense! Men and their wars are so foolish. To the Queen, war is not a game, and there are no tidy little rules she feels she must obey. She knows only that if things have gotten that bad, then all that matters is that she win with her people, for her people. The Queen does all she can to avoid war, but if she finds she must declare war, or war is declared upon her, she knows it may be life and death for her and those in her realm, or near to it. She will not waste time with any silly regulations about uniforms or anything else. It is not a game to her. She is in it to win, and she will do whatever it takes. When the Romans forced the hand of the great British Iceni queen Boudica, she had to go to war, and so she put everything she had into it. She conscripted all her people, including children. When she leveled London, she killed Roman children and was criticized for it. She was single-minded in her purpose. She cared nothing for men's rules of war, and they were outraged. But to her, it was no game. She was in it to win at all costs, not for her ego, but for the very lives of her people and their future. Sister, avoid war to the best of your ability. Use magic, use prayer, use wiles, use negotiation, use stalling, use subterfuge, use every tactic you know to avoid war. Check your ego and see if the war you think you are facing is really necessary or just your ego flexing its muscles. If you find your hand forced and your ego is not in play, then pull no punches. Say your husband is trying to take the kids away from you just to punish you. This is war. This is the time to win. Be in it to win. Don't hesitate. Don't dither. Don't second guess yourself. Go all out for your children, for your people, for the good of your realm, for the good of all. Win and win quickly so the healing can begin faster for everybody, including those you vanquish. The Queen will not start a fight generally, but she will definitely give her all to finish one. You don't want to be on the other side when she does. All hail Boudica. So as we come to a close for this class, let's talk finally about ceremonial leadership. Ritual and ceremony help us to remember. The Queen is the leader for ritual and ceremony for herself, for her family, and for her realm. Life passages, such as weddings and baby showers and birthdays and graduations and funerals, are sacred, and many of them should be marked by ritual and ceremony. A ritual is a sacred ceremony performed repeatedly over time. Your birthday party every year, your meditation every morning. That's a ritual. A ceremony is a sacred event performed once. Your funeral, your wedding. Well, okay, you intended at the time to perform it once. Ritual and ceremony enrich our lives by marking life passages and events, by helping us remember the significant events of our time here on earth. You know, it's so funny. I can barely remember long stretches of my 20s. I know things happened, but I would be hard pressed to tell you anything of, say, 1974. Now, 1972, I remember very well because during that year I experienced three important ceremonies: graduating from high school, my father's funeral, and my wedding. Big year. Yet I can hardly remember 1974 because no ceremony or ritual marked anything important that year. Undoubtedly, important things happened to me in 1974, but they are lost to my conscious mind because no ritual or ceremony helped me to mark them. So let's talk for a moment about the events for which the Queen can have a ritual or ceremony. The Queen of a realm is responsible for recognizing when, in the life cycle of a family, ritual or ceremony should take place. She's responsible for leading the planning of ceremony and for facilitating, unless she delegates it, for facilitating the event. Family ceremony should be a group endeavor with most of the family involved and with the Queen leading all like water. And a single woman would do very well to honor herself with frequent, appropriate ritual as she goes through her life experiences, inviting friends and family to participate.
God crown you with a crown of glory and righteousness, that having a right faith and manifold fruit of good works, you may obtain the crown of an everlasting kingdom by the gift of him whose kingdom endureth forever. Amen.
The Queen is the one responsible for bringing the spiritual power back to ritual. Most of our modern day rituals are completely trivialized, absolutely watered down versions of formerly powerful spiritual rituals.
The service is at an end. And the Right Honorable Sir Winston Churchill, who has said of the Queen, the lady whom we respect because she is our Queen, and whom we love, because she is herself. The Duke of
The birthday party. Once it was a joyful yearly rite of acknowledgement of both the mother and child, because it was the mother's birthday too, was filled with deep spiritual meaning and holding powerful intention for the future. And now it is simply a party with balloons and cards and presents and a superficial, germ laden wish blown onto a cake. The baby shower, once a powerful acknowledgement of new life coming from the spirit world to live in an earthly body, and a celebration welcoming that new life. Now a dumb party with silly parlor games involving toilet paper and such. The spiritual power of ritual has been drained by patriarchy from most of our daily rituals in modern life. The Queen, as leader, understands how much human beings need meaningful group and individual ritual and ceremony in order to be emotionally and psychologically healthy. She knows it is her job to bring this meaning, spiritual depth, and power back to ritual. And she knows it is her job to learn the specific steps in how to lead satisfying ritual for her family and for her realm. Now, you are not likely to have this grand a ceremony anytime soon, the one that you're seeing here on the screen, Queen Elizabeth's coronation. But your ceremonies and rituals are just as important to your life as they were and are to the Queen of England. So take them seriously. Your ancient ancestresses knew the power of ritual for making a meaningful life, and so shall you. A family with no ritual tradition is a barren and deprived family. A company with good ritual tradition will have much more loyal employees. The Queen familiarizes herself with how a good ritual is carried out, and it is she who is responsible for calling for ritual and ceremony and leading the creation of it for her realm. We come to a beautiful, graceful conclusion talking about your journaling for this class. Consider the rituals and ceremonies you have experienced in your life to date. Did they feel honoring to you? Was the point trivialized? Was there enough satisfying spiritual intent for you? Consider the rituals and ceremonies you would have liked to have had but did not. Can you create one for yourself now? What are the most important life events for which you would like to have ritual for yourself in the future? What would the intent be? Who would you like to join you in these rituals? If you are a woman with a family, what do you consider to be the most important family events for which you would like to create memorable ritual or ceremony? What could ritual or ceremony bring to your life that you do not have now? How does your spirituality inform your creation of ritual and ceremony? And how might you bring transformational ritual to your workplace? Ritual or ceremony that might feel appropriate for all religions and points of view. Consider how ritual can bring more meaning to your life and plan a ritual for yourself as soon as you can. Women who are divorced should always have a divorce ritual, the same as having a wedding ritual. Don't leave that life passage ceremony hanging out there undone. Complete the event of your marriage and have an honoring closing ritual, which will allow you to fully move on in power. And if you want to know more about ritual, send your request to Queen of Your Realm, and we will send you information on ritual
and how to create it simply, easily, and powerfully for yourself. Well, sisters, this concludes Class 6, The Leader, Part 1. We have discussed how the Queen is the good leader for humanity. We have spoken about the specifics of exactly how a queen leads. Very different from the way average men lead. We talked about the difference between leading like alpha and leading like water. Coming up in part 2 of this class, your next video, we discuss how the queen aspect is also the speaker for woman. And of course, since the queen is missing in so many women, this explains why women's voices have not been heard for thousands of years. So in this next class that you'll be getting shortly, we also discuss the way in which a queenly woman communicates, how she speaks, how she is heard. So until we meet again, do your journaling, create your ritual, and remember, you are queen of your own realm, priestess at your own altar, and goddess embodied. It is so, and so it is. Blessed be.